Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 24. More scripting. Uh, couple super quick notes. Cultofreak.com. This is kind of the hub of everything I do. I keep it reasonably well updated. You can find the calendar here. But in regards to what we're doing, every episode I usually post something for that episode with links and whatnot. If you want the code, usually I actually added the code to each post as needed when we wrote something, because this is starting to get a little bit beefier. I don't want to have hundreds of lines in each post that are just code. I've always kept up to date my GitHub repository, so if you go on that, which is here, the GitHub icon, you can get to this one, and in here, usually the night of the day of the stream or right away, I will push the changes and you can find the code I'm writing. Now, super quick word on the scripting side of things. So I know sometimes people that follow don't know, are not programmers, don't know how to script or whatever. That's okay. Nothing, I've mentioned this in the posts, but it's probably worth putting in video. Nothing of what I'm doing is strictly required for when we will be done with the scripting side of things. You will be able to keep following the stream without this part. It's accessory in a way. It's automation isn't strictly necessary. You can do things by hand if you wish, if you're not comfortable with scripting. With that said, I do recommend that you give it a go. And if you don't know OpenMaya, most of what I'm doing, probably everything that I'm doing, you should still be able to do with OpenMaya 1, though I don't recommend doing it. OpenMaya 1 is painful. You should be able to do it with PyML. You should be able to do it with commands. And it's a pretty good exercise to try and instrument your rigs. So let's have a look at what we want to do. Now, we've done some work, and at this point, I think that and I still need to figure out what I've done for the selection. I'm just not caring enough about it. What we have here is something that iterates the selection. This is our main loop. Based on that, we call container from node, which gets us the asset that we're interested in. So it's a component for us. And the thing we wrote the last time was getting the key objects from the container. So running these is basically running the main. This was a deletion that will get rid of the guide. Still seems to be working. Did I undo in here? Okay. So, and that's the reason why I'm using a command. If you use OpenMaya 2, you don't get free undo and redo. So be ready to reload the scene. Hence, it might be super tiny unless you're watching in 1440p. Hence why I have a disposable scene called reloadable. Save the state things are in before you start working so that you can quickly reload it after an experiment. Now, let's get right away back to the code. So, we probably don't want to do the deletion thing. So, this is our iteration over all the selected containers we have. We're getting the key objects. We are printing the results of deletion. So we don't want that. Do we want the global variable? So let's just do something simple like that for now. Oops. So if we turn that on, then we will delete stuff. We won't right now. So here is something about this whole scripting thing. It's not so much about the scripting, though it's probably useful for people to see some OpenMaya 2 and how I'm doing it and all of that. It's more about the idea of how do you analyze a problem, how do you instrument to solve it. Now, and choosing what actions to run. Object filter. Oh man, that is a lot of stuff that I really would not rather not have. So these are all the object filters that come from tweaking the outliner and stuff like that. I want to get rid of it. And it seems that show auxiliary node is synchronized across views. I did not know about that, and that is pretty annoying. So let's get rid of that. My annotator save tabs, default camera shapes filter. So these are all things, when you show auxiliary nodes, you see a lot of CRUD that you normally would not want to see, because that gets turned off, and then anything you do here will have an effect in there sometimes. We basically grab a lot of CRUD that we do not care about. So let's get rid of those and turn auxiliary off and take away auto add on create. And you should, if you're working with containers, you probably want these off, otherwise you will see only a subset of your stuff, which is just the containers and not the nodes that are individually containers. So with all of that out of the way, the thing we want to do, and this is where you go like, okay, this is figure out what you want in your software, figure out what you want in what you're writing, and then do it in baby steps. The next problem we want to solve is connecting and disconnecting the guide. And we have two parameters here. So let me make sure that our master graph is pinned. Actually, in fact, I don't even need that. And two parameters. So what we did with these is basically tracking things that we want to swap and delete and so on. Now, as we were adding the guide, as we were disconnecting and reconnecting things, what we did is we created ourselves a compound attribute made of two parts. For each of them, we connected the origin attribute that was coming from, and then the equivalent guided attribute. Now, the guided attribute is basically something where we're saying, hey, this thing is gonna be connected to something that is not what the actual reconnection should have. And let's see if, and I know that in a few places then it turned out we didn't need the stuff that we swapped. So we might have to do a bit of modeling later on, but for now we want to solve the scripting problem. And in the guide, we're basically saying, and these is, so origin is where the original attribute was coming from, and guided is the attribute that we have reconnected to something else. So by recording these, we can basically by finding these plugs and looking at these, we can look if the guided attribute, so in this case rotate in example, is connected to something that is different than the origin attribute. It means that it's been guided, it's been taken over by the guide, and it is probably not connected as it should be to the controls any longer. Now, by swapping plugs, so if it's not connected or if it's connected to something else or whatever, by taking the guided plug and connecting what is coming from the origin plug, we will basically disable the guide without deleting it or anything, and we will be able to restore the read functionality. So we definitely want to be able to find all of these attributes. Now, this is the analysis, if you want, of figuring out what you want to do. Write it down on a notebook. Writing things down will help you greatly, cementing your understanding of a problem as you go through it. Then what follows, and there's a few things we might want to keep tracking that. What follows is, okay, what was the guide connection that was informing that that attribute originally, so that if we want to toggle the guide on and off, we can. Now, at one point, somebody was asking me, why don't you have another set of plugs called the guided attribute, so that you can reconnect the guide to inform something similar to these, but instead of having the origin and the guided attribute that I want to reconnect, doing the same thing for the guided ones. Now the guide might be deleted, so that attribute thing, but whereas something like these settings might not be. So that attribute is likely to become deadened very often, most of the time. And the other thing is, if we have a mechanism by which we can do a quick swap between these, once we reconnect things by origin and guided, if we take the plug that was originally connected, so the guide one that was originally connected, where we're restoring the control plug, and we plug that into the origin one, then what we're effectively doing is swapping the guide and control, which is actually pretty cool. So you don't need another attribute. You can use these, and that's why it's called to swap and not something else. Because all you want to do is swap plugs and keep track of the history of what you're doing, and that basically lets you toggle. Now it also means you have to be diligent, and we have stuff that is not part of the guide that's connected in here because we changed our mind. So before this works properly, we'll do a little bit of noodling. That's a lot of talking and not a lot of coding, but hopefully that makes sense to you, and it will allow you to make sense of what we're going to be doing next. So the other thing we want to do here is, as we move these, we are moving this control, which we normally would want to be affected by something else. So to see if the effect is right, let's see. Ankle reparent matrix mode. So this is the one that is being taken over by the guide, and I imagine this is probably done by having one of these modes taking the ankle guide part instead of a static offset. And remember that if the origin is empty, and that makes the swap a little bit harder, if the origin is empty, then we want to just sever the connection, but the swapping thing I was talking about still makes sense. Chat, let me know, does these, like in this course, these might not be super clear. Does it make sense to you what I'm saying, what I'm rambling on about? So let's get ourselves something meaningful. Now we want an offset, and this is something that's kind of cool. Like right now, the buffer for this is being controlled by an offset that's provided from the matrix. Once the guide is out of the way, we will want that offset to become a static value, which means that we don't really need, so like reparent, let's keep that in there for a second. This work we're doing to go from here to here to here to here. Yep. Which I'm storing in this plug is getting the reparent. We don't want these. We don't care for these. We also have some of that work for the rotate. Yeah, seems logical. Cool. So hopefully everybody's still following. So same for rotate. What we want to do is swap the matrix plug. So these two things we're tracking, we don't really need it. In fact, we don't need two of these, because once we had instated the guide the way we're doing it, what we want is for these that is going here to be removed. So the origin attribute is gonna be this one. Can I output the array entry? That's gonna be, yes, I can. So this is, arrays can make things like the slightest bit more complicated, but it's not too bad. So sorry, the guided attribute is this one. This is the one that's been taken over by the guide. Now if I leave origin empty in this case, it means disconnect these. So if I disconnect these, there's still something that needs to happen, but my expectation is it, okay, it goes to 0. So my matrix there is being deleted. My expectation is that I can now freely move these, and this has no effect. So This is what you will be doing manually to disconnect the guide. Now, the thing I need to figure out, that might be the nature of this array, is that this matrix here, where is it? Matrix mode. It's one of those that doesn't let me see the attributes. I suspect that when I disconnect these parameter here doesn't, it gets its value reset. So that's a bit of a pain. We might need a constants panel where these actually drives the constant itself. That's a bit of a pain in the back, but we should still be able to deal with this. So let me pin this stuff. And I really don't like that I have to use pinning, but whatever. So this is my config. We are accepting inputs into that config, yes. So we probably want to add something in here that the guide can control. It's kind of a bit dangerous, as in you gotta make sure that you don't have weird cycles, but it doesn't seem that we have any of it. Like, this seems to be pretty much the output. So, and the guide providing the config seems like a pretty legit thing to do. So I say more scripting, less modeling, but a little bit of it seems inevitable in this case because of the behavior of arrays. Now, we want to make sure that we can save, as this is severed, that we can save it as a constant. Arrays do not seem to give us the behavior we want, so we need to make up for that. Now, the way we've been adding matrices in so far should remain, and this is gonna be guide encode control. The fact that this matrix mode doesn't behave the way I want it to really bothers me. Normally I replace this node with my own. I did not know it had that behavior. It's a funky array. So what do we want to call it? It's encode offset is probably gonna be fine for this. Encode global offset. We're keeping it. Still making sense up to here. If you disconnected the set from matrix and use the matrix sum after you. Yeah, it's possible. If you disconnected the second matrix and use the matrix sum after as your origin, would that work? The thing is, I can't. No, it wouldn't, because I need these offsets. So if I use this as the origin and plug it right in here, it doesn't get multiplied by that offset. This value is key. If you don't have it, you've seen it, the control goes back in there. So that offset is the key thing that the matrix puts into play. So now the question is, if I do that, I would expect this to still work. Cool. Now, I would expect this one, beside the fact that I can now see the value, we could use a decompose and just do it in translations because we're ignoring the rotations for the most part, but I don't want to. So if I sever these, now this still works. That is cool. And this does not have an effect on it. So our plan is sound. I am gonna save this modification as my actual scene. So, because we will need to keep this stuff. What we calling these? Guy tweaks is gonna be fine. And then I'm gonna save it again as my reloadable. Yes, it already exists, I know. So what we want to do is get these setting here and connect it to nothing. The other thing we want to do, this is to reinstate the control system basically. The other thing we want to do is when we do that swap, we want to ensure that as the swap happens, we'll take this, which is connected to that, plug it into origin, so it will get us this continuous toggling. And then let me know if that was an answer to not the question you asked, but I think it is what you were asking. Now, that has complete control of the rotate as well. So we clearly don't need the rotate part in here to swap one. Is it gonna resize my array? No, I should be able to delete these. And this is stuff that I should probably do in the master scene. It'll be fine. Cool. What else are we doing? The SRT buffer, we're doing something similar. So I said I wouldn't have done the node link. I'm sorry. I want this example to actually work. Otherwise, the scripting is going to become very unclear. Mixed day today. So I'm pretty positive that for this stuff, we had used a similar technique where we found out that controlling the buffer through an attribute would have been enough. So this up vector reparent is what I would expect to have my item of interest. It has a matrix mode in it, and I bet you that this actually is the one that goes to the guide. The fact that we are able to get a good read on the graph like this is a good sign. I like that. So we will have the same problem here. If I just sever this straight away, the up vector goes to the center of the word, which means we need another constant like parameters, which I'm okay with at this point. Up vector global offset is gonna do us. All right. Same trick, and I believe that this is all we're doing for the leg global. We'll see. Now, for the up vector control, this is the guide up vector control. It has a buffer which is centerward, and we're using its matrix. I suspect that we have reason, like good reason to do these, because I think that we wanted to make sure that the up vector, you know, if we move the God node, it inherits and it's not just stuck in the word somewhere. We might in fact need to do something similar. Oh, no, this is buffer a different way. So yeah, we might have to take care of that business at some point, but now is not the time. If what I just said doesn't make sense to you, don't worry over much. Like, we haven't explored the options for that guide. So I expect this to still do its work. Yes. And I expect that severing this connection now does not break the rig. Cool. So I think that with that, we definitely want to track that. So the guided attribute in this case, so this is vec reparent going in there. The guided attribute is definitely a vec global offset, and it does not need an origin. We want that severed. So that's good. The vector reparent was the same thing, same trick we had in there. We were using rotate and translate. Now we have a matrix doing the work, so we can sever that and get rid of that. So this looks like a pretty straightforward swap. I reckon I should save these as our next master scene. Yes, please. And yes, please. Everything's still making sense what we've done here. It's about half an hour worth of explaining it between the tools and what I was doing, but I think that our script should work the first time we run it to actually do a proper swap. So we don't have anything connected in any of the origins, which takes a case away. So the other thing when you're writing this kind of stuff is get yourself a few different cases if you can. If you know origin can be disconnected or connected, get yourself a component that has both cases where both are available, like one that is disconnected and one that is not connected, and one that is connected. Or if you can't get one like that, maybe work across multiple components so that you try and hit all the cases. We're not going to do that because we want to move on with some scripting. I think this is good enough for us to work with. So what do we want to do from here? We have something that gets us all the key objects. Now the next thing we need to do is finding... Oh, we actually had these in our struct-like dictionary, I believe. 2 parameters. Yes, we do. So the next thing we want to do is definitely find the toSwap plug. So we can inline that stuff given our key objects. The tool panel object itself should be key obs. What is it? No suggestions. It is not that good. Key obs keys free. Oh, this is a very bad thing I've done here for the record. This dictionary here, I was going like, oh, get the 3rd key. Sorry, get the 4th key, like key index free. That is a terrible idea. This is not ordered. The fact that I've created them like these has no meaning whatsoever for Python, because these are hashed, which means they're not ordered the way you would expect them to be. So we either move to an ordered dictionary to have that order, or you will need to find things by name. Now, we do not care. Like, this was a nifty thing for us to explore, but the reality of it is that we could probably do something like component name and set that to be the component name, and that would be good. Then 2 parameters is just because any object could be here. We don't want to change the nature of that key all the time. So it seems like a good idea to do that and make it proper struct-like. And fix our script correspondingly. The other thing I could have done is use an ordered dictionary. I don't want to go by keys. I would like to go by name in this case. So MF dependency, no, this is good. For that to work, then we will want to get the component name, and I should probably use constant for these, but not yet. Then what we want for the tool panel is simply going to be called tool parameters. So my expectation is that this tool works, and let's get, actually let's straight up do that, and let's see if it still works. My expectation is that I didn't have that many occurrences of names or stuff like that, so my expectation is these will still work. I really need to do something about that. I am an idiot. I should probably reload these. Okay, so control, component name. See what I mean? Like, if you look at the order I'm getting the restitution here, I am not getting the component name. I'm not getting this order, which is component name, control guide, the form, tool parameters. It's just by accident that what I had before worked. I was thinking, oh, I'm going to use this as a struct, so I thought in terms of memory offsets. Yeah, you can see the ordering has nothing to do with how we specified it, which is expected. If you care about the ordering, then what you want is an order dictionary, and I think it's in collections, so from collections import order dict. Yeah, so if you use that and you create it like that, that dictionary is going to track order as well, and it has a few order-like methods to it. We don't care for it just yet. I am comfortable with things being name-based for now. So this is fine. Now the next thing we want to do is if tool panel is not none, so if there is something in there that was found, this is actually the tool panel mObject handle. Trying to think of what naming convention I've used. I regret not having used the ones I use at work, but the less contamination I have between work and stream, the better. So, tell me I'm recording. Yes, I am. And then we want to get the object. You could also do, if you want to be, oops, if you want to be a little bit, is that the list upper? So that should be getting me an mObject handle. I think it's is valid is the one we're after. Yeah, so mObject handle as is valid, and I don't remember if it's is live. I don't think so. mObject it definitely as is null. So if it's an empty mObject, if that memory is collected, the mObject itself still exists, but it's going to be pointing to the void, and is null is a method that will return true in that case. So let's actually, oh, I don't have the completion working. I fixed a few things with my PyCharm, but not everything. So the object itself is gonna be tool panel mob dot objects, and what I was talking about is this is a loop, so we can continue if we're not we're in the loop scope here, so if we're not interested, and is no should be a method, but I need to check. Then you can continue. Now we don't have a case where that's where that's gonna happen, so I'm not gonna care for that. Now that we have the mob, we want to do no shortcuts. No, sure, let's do this the hard way. My expectation is that the tool panel is a DAG node and not a freestanding DG node, not a depend node. So I am gonna use MFN. Is it MFN DAG node or MFN DAG? I think it's MFN DAG node. Yeah, whatever. I'll need to fix that auto completion for the mob. Now, if this was a DG node without a DAG presence, so if it was like some matrix mode or something like that, this will barf, and that's a good thing. Like in your work, inside early failure, if something is unexpected, make sure that you fail as early as possible, because if this was a depend node, we might go down a long way before realizing we had done something wrong. So we're gonna go for MFN DAG. We're not using that for anything else. I have shadowing warning, so these will tell me if I was shadowing a variable that was coming from outside this scope. And what else? MFN DAG should still have find plug because it has all the methods from MFN dependency node. So, and we code that to swap, I believe. Go away. And oh, nice names. Let me think. Is there a way I can show not nice names, but the actual names? I do not remember. Bugger. There is a way, and I do not remember what it is. If someone in chat catches up to it, please let me know. What we're gonna do is guess that we've gone lower camel case, and then we'll print it or whatever. Now, We don't care whether it's networked or not, because we're gonna look at children and elements in it, so don't pass this tag, and I expect that every element in the array is connected. So no reason not to be obvious here. Now this is the point where I will say we can probably daughter got excited about something. I don't know what, but she's super cute when she does it. So this seems legit. It's not crashing, and I would expect this to be happening, so let's just do. And this is another thing I like about charcoal. However, you know, somewhat primitive, it has auto-completion. That is so good. So we're not getting a print of anything. Are we getting in there though? This is where a debugger would be nice. Maybe his valid is not responding, but so it never gets to be if tool panel MOBA. Okay, is it none? I thought maybe we're not saving the right thing somewhere or whatever. Leg global, 2 parameters. Oh, am I an idiot? I suspect that I am an idiot. Because what I might not be doing right is I was using the key to find the object. So I have removed that key, so I will now not find it anymore. I suspect that is the case. Let's have a look. Object name. Key objects from container. If object in, yeah, there you go. So that's why I add in line that container component name. So this will take care of control guide the form, and component name will be left unaffected unless I have an object called component name. It sounds like we need to be a little bit more specific with an elif here, which is fair enough. If the name is control, then we want to do that. Oops. And honestly, there's better ways to do it. I could compile a list of valid names and do that. Tell you what, let's actually do that. So nah, let's not do that. Let's keep things simple here. And so I want to populate control guide the form tool parameters. And oops, what is your problem? Okay, you do not have a problem. So if guide, we're super lo-fi here. Super lo-fi when you're experimenting is fine. In fact, super lo-fi is fine for a long time. So the other thing, if object name in this case we want to replace these with double equals. We're also interested in two parameters, and we had successfully, we're doing this every loop, which is kind of silly. This is actually pretty silly, but because every loop, if we, you know, if it's not control, if it's not guide, if it's not the form, then we basically pay the price for forming this string. This is bad, but for now we want to move on along. I will, however, add myself a to-do. it definitely will need removing. We just want to move along for now. So 2 parameters. In that case, we set the 2 parameters key to that. Now my expectation is that this will be working now. So reload and lose changes. Continue reloading, yes please. And I am sure I will not have let myself down. No, I'm not sure actually, but I am hoping. Alright, leg level 2 parameters to swap. Brilliant. We are back in the game. How long has it been? Longer than I wish, but I think that we needed to have that conversation about what we want our tools to do. So, now the next thing we want to do is be able to iterate over all the children of these. Now, so super quick word about when do I factor something out. Factoring basically means taking a chunk from a larger piece and moving it into its own thing. When people say refactoring, in theory will mean you just reorder or like slightly change what is going on in each chunk. But when people say refactoring, they often mean I'm gonna rewrite it the way I would like it to look. And defactoring means that if you have something that's been chunked out and you have good reason to inline it into the main monolith, you do so. The IDE is PyCharm, and this is presentation mode. So maybe you recognize it more if you see it like this. But I quite like the fact that it can go in presentation mode and it goes distraction free, plus the text gets larger. This is the community version. It's free even for commercial use. Took me a bit to set it up to my liking, but these days I like it. Moving on. Now, I was saying before I refactor, defactor, factor, and all of that crap, I think that it's good to get to a practical result. So I'm not going to create myself a function called find my toSwap plug. That is too granular. I have no interest in that. I would like to actually get to the point where maybe given a dictionary, I get an iterator of all the toSwap plugs. Now, there's a tricky thing here, and I need to have a look at some of my other code. We don't need to deal with it just yet, but, and I don't think this is going to be a problem for us. You should know, however, that when a plug is an array of compounds, if you iterate a certain way, you will get a hard crash, because it is simply going to respond to a number of methods that will then go to void memory. I will show you how to fix it the next time. I don't want to pull the handbrake yet again. Because we know that this is connected to stuff for now, we're okay, it's not going to crash. But if this was completely empty and you were to iterate it a certain way, you will get a hard crash. It's the nature of bindings that reference that are very close to the C++ API underneath. The laziness is messing my up in this case. It's trivial and relatively inexpensive to guard against it. So in the next episode. Now with that done, I know that toSwap is an array, so I don't need to check that. If you want to iterate over an array, you should get its count first. Now, this is another interesting thing that a lot of people don't know. Well, it's not necessarily interesting, but important. So this is a plug, and you could go num elements, and a lot of people do that, and that is gonna eventually cause you physical pain. Because num elements is made, and let me make sure that I'm not saying something stupid. Num elements basically is meant to use inside nodes, which have a certain cycle of updating. So there you go. And it will give you an int, and that is the number of indices which are currently in use. Connected elements, not evaluated, might not fully exist, blah, 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 blah. So the thing it doesn't tell you here, I think in the C side of the API, in the C++ side of the API, it does tell you, look, watch out for these. So it's always good to look at the C reference, even if you don't know C. What you want is actually evaluate num elements. This is for use inside nodes when you deal with arrays. When you are not in nodes, what you use is evaluate num elements. So if you're in a run1 script like we are, this is what you use. Because there are many cases where stuff can be connected to that plug, but you can be in such a state that the number of items in that array that Maya is currently aware of the moment you're poking it, especially if you're establishing connections, might be out of date with the real number of items, or some of that might be in some transient state. It's a bit hard to explain the details of it. You might have to take my word on it for now. But basically, being in that uncertain state can lead you to a very bad and painful place. If you use evaluate num elements, what Maya does is it will actually ping that array to figure out what its state is, consolidate all the elements that are in it, and you will be fine. Man, I'm taking a lot of tangents, but I think this is the stuff that is kind of important to go over, because you don't get it from the documentation, and I don't know, like a lot of the training material I've seen out there when I was reviewing stuff, I was not impressed with. So this is our attribute count. Sorry, this is our element count. And you cannot straight up iterate like Python iteration, something like that. So you use a good old X range. For I in X range element count should get us what we want. And if you want the sub elements, you can go. I really don't like this name I've given it, but at this point I'm stuck with it. You have logical index and physical index. I think in this case we probably want logical index. What is it? At logical index? No. Element by logical index. So let me. Sorry for the flash of white. How do I explain these? Basically, physical indices are the indices in the way they're ordered in memory. This is a very bad approximation, but it might help you think about the problem. The logical index is what Maya will show you here for the most part, like the way it's ordering here, but it's not necessarily this number. If in dubbed, I reckon logical index is generally safer. And I would have to test some of these for the record, because at this point, this is the kind of stuff that you figure out, you wrap it once, and then you forget what you were doing. So element by logical index I will get me my element. Now this is the element plug, is that. So that is gonna have two children. One is going to be called origin and one is going to be called guided. Now, if you iterate children, this is a compound. An array has elements which are ordered numerically. A compound has children which are ordered by hash names. Same thing I said for dictionaries, and this can be lethal if you don't know about it and if you don't handle it with stuff like this. Like, there is a word in which you get to translate, you look at the children, and you think that you're going to get X, Y, Z. And I've seen literally exactly this problem. And what you get is X, Z, Y, because that's how the hashing sorted them out. You assume that you got X, Y, Z in a certain order, you pump them out, and everything works, but you just get things that are oddly aligned and pain ensues. Be ready to deal with names. So, we, at this point, we do care about what comes from where. The index is going to be fine most of the time, but you want to print it out first. It will hash the same, in a case like this, it'll hash the same way all the time. So, it will, well, all the time, like in my experience, there's cases where it might not, and I don't know about it. So if I print out the element count, it might come out guided and then origin, or it might come out origin and then guided, but it's not going to change for every port. We're still probably going to be doing it by name. Whew. All right, so we want the subplugs, and you can only iterate children kind of the same way you do. I can do it the same way you would do an array by getting the count, and then you have to do some sorting by the name. So we might use a dictionary and push into the dictionary. For now, let's make sure that what we have works, because I've been talking so much that I kind of lost track of things. We're not crashing, which is always a good sign. We like not crashing. And we do get to swap 0 and to swap 1. Good. This is the part where we could probably work inside charcoal a little bit. So we're closer to Maya. It's a fairly simple loop. So, children count is... I know, like, this layout is specified by me. I don't need to check all kind of silly attributes. I know that it's a compound. I know that it's a compound. I think it's child count. Oops. 4J. And I know some people hate IJ and things like that. Deal with it. I like it when I'm in a hurry, and I often am when I'm on stream. It is great. Chat, is this making sense? How many people have I lost? Viewer count is actually really good, but lmplug dot child, then you go by this is, I think this is the syntax. We'll find out, possibly with a hard crash. No, I don't think so. Let's try that. No, there's no attribute child count. It might be children count, which will be correct. Num children, sorry. Because it's fine to use num sometimes and count sometimes and then sometimes, and I am gonna start whinging. So we should be, yes, there you go. So we're getting to swap origin 0 to swap origin 0, so we might need to actually use the J. So here you get origin guided, origin guided. By chance, it's the same here. You have to take my word on the fact that sometimes it can come out swapped. It's very rare, but it's that very rare that will mess you up. Now, what should we be doing here? I think that we can create ourselves a quick dictionaries. So I have interest in subplugs, and it's lowercase. Yes, we're being good boys. Origin none. I could put a null m plug in there. It's tempting. I would like strict typing, but I don't want to go into more detail than I should. We're gonna be doing the right thing. So I am actually gonna do things by name, though I could rely on the order probably. I think we don't have a ton of time, and in fact we're almost out of time. I might as well get to the point where we have the plugs and they are done the right way, so that some useful lessons will have come through. Start piling up the questions in chat if you want to ask them, please, because I reckon in 2-3 minutes I'm gonna wrap these. So another useful things that you should probably know. So this is our subplug. Our names are going a little bit all over the place, but I'm fine with that for now. Oops, I normally have an auto-completion where it will put the equal in for me there. Short name, is it? Let me check. No. So there's a few... Oh, come on. Give me a break. There's a few ways to partial name. There's a few ways to get the name of a plug. Now, name can get pretty tricky. Sometimes you might not get quite what you want. Partial name is great, and you should know it and learn to love it. Because these has all kind of stuff that is super useful, and it fishes directly from what Maya already has available in memory very close, and it will give you a ton of info. So sometimes you want to get a long string that you can tokenize yourself, or you want more info or less info from a plug. You can even get partial names a couple times with different attributes, do a difference, which is reasonably quick, and find interesting information from the intersection. It has options like include the node name, no mandatory indices. I think it's no mandatory indices for when you have like the -1 for the 0th element in an array. I would have to check. Instance indices, don't know, to be honest. It might be something to do with attribute instances. Use alias is great. So when you want to know the alias name of a plug, you can get that. And use long names and so on. Now, instead of nice names. This is super important. This is probably the main reason why I'm mentioning this. Because if you just get the name of a plug, such as translate X and so on, you will often get like TX, DY, TZ. The real name of that plug is actually translate X, translate Y, translate Z, and you can only get it, as far as I know, you can only reasonably quickly get it from partial name with use long names. So, in this case, after all of that, we're probably just gonna use name. Because I think in like this case, I don't do the nice name thing, and subplug. Am I using subplug's origin guide? Yeah, that's okay. Maybe we should be a little bit more obvious. So there you go. This is getting me the subplug. That's the same as we had before. So it's now getting me, for name, it's getting me the whole thing. Now I would like partial name, I think it's called like that because by default it was only getting you these, and then they added options. So this is getting me the array entry as well, which is cool. Now here's our chance to see if this is making any difference. Is that, whoa, an invalid keyword argument. So I reckon that there's a typo there. I was like, why the hell do you abbreviate like that? Oh, that's funny. So there's a typo in the documentation. Autodesk, if you listen in moment, fix your doco. There's a missing Y in there. So no, those are mandatory indices as far as we're concerned, but we're still good. We have a much shorter job now. What do we want from there? There's probably a couple of options we could use to get the shortest name without the array. I don't remember them at this point. Useful attribute path is false by default, which I'm fine with. Use long names is false. So I think this is as reduced as we can get it. So we'll have to do an R split. So let's do that for a second. Again, I normally have a lot of this stuff wrapped, so I am in need of a refresher as much as some of you people following are probably need to find this stuff out. I think that the syntax for Python R split is like that. So good. R split means split from the right, and we don't know if there's going to be potentially, like in the name of the plugin full, there's going to be 5 dots because it's deeply nested. So if you split R split like that, in fact, I think you can also limit the number of times it splits. It will stop at the first dot it finds. So this is going to get me a string, which I will reasonably expect to work like that. Now this is not a test name any longer. Nah, it is not doing me any favor. It's just, oh yeah, I was splitting in, fair enough. So, am I gonna be, yeah, let's inline everything. There you go. Key name, so actually, key from plug is gonna be fine. It sounds a bit functiony. Plug key is gonna be doing it. So, I thought, oh yeah, we did, okay. Now, This is another pretty important thing, probably. Almost there. I'm a little bit over time, but I think this is important. I could do that. And you will think that you are fine. And I might even be. In fact, let me save these and let me make sure that it gets picked up in here. Yes, very good. I can do this. No, apparently I can't because the windows keep changing order. I could do this. And you will see plugs in there. Origin guided, none, you to swap. What the hell? I appear to be stupid. I want the second part. So origin guided. Now you might think you're in a good place. You're inside this scope, and you're taking a dictionary from here, and you got your plugs. You know, you verified what's going on, and you put, okay, in this key that is the shortest possible name of the plug, which we're interested in. You just store it in the dictionary, and some to most of the time you are going to be fine. Now the problem with Python garbage collection coupled with the OpenMaya 2 bindings, which are very lazy, and that's a good thing, it's not a bad thing. However, the problem with that is that objects can be very, very, very volatile, which means there's no telling what the garbage collector will do to the lazy bindings when it comes to this plug. So this is a very weak reference. Now I'm going from a loop scope to a scope that is right above it with the dictionary. Chances are this is going to be fine. If I was crossing functions, so if I was sending plugs from one function to the other, especially if those functions are remote and it's not one calling the other right away, these could be like really malformed. So when it reaches the other function, it might still have the name and respond to that, but it could hard crash on you if you actually try to extract the value. There is one way a friend found where you can make it a lot less volatile, but this is more important when you're passing them around functions if you use copy. And I think that's a static method. So, no, actually I'm lying. So if you create an empty plug this way, and inside that empty plug you copy the subplug, like that is going to protect that plug much, much better. So let's also make sure that we're storing the right thing. And a lot of people don't know about this and are surprised. To swap origin, to swap guided, cool. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That was, somebody was saying, oh, some of the code might be hidden behind your camera if it's too long. That is a very good point. I think it shouldn't be too much of a problem with the stuff we've written in so far. It'll be available, but yes, seeing these being typed is probably important. So this is the stuff I was doing. I'm gonna leave it in there because we're dealing with very few plugs. The cost of this is very minimal. It is not a bad thing to have it. We have our subplug dictionary. I am almost out of time. In fact, I am out of time. So no, don't do that. Why are you trying to be smart? I know the length of these, so I'm fine. In fact, I should probably just do -1. So it always takes the last. Although this being a single split, it's guaranteed to be 2. Is it a good time to actually get all of our stuff together? I would say so. This seems like a good moment to get a list of this stuff. So I'm gonna use terrible names, but or swap couples, which sounds suspiciously like swingers are involved, but it is not the case. Now I'm gonna precise that list. Because I know exactly how long this list is, I have no reason to append to it, even if it's a small one, so there's no like strong economy to these. Bless you. Bless you. So also, and I have the index I'm trading in, so my expectation is that these will do me. So a list of dictionaries seems like a good idea, seems pretty close to what Maya would do with an array of compounds. Now, if you don't know what this is basically saying, hey, create a list of this size with just nuns in it. And now at this point, I would expect, oops, these to work. So let's run this other test, and the next time I'm gonna factor that out. There you go. We are in play. All right, I'm gonna call it. I think it's in a good enough place. I need to add. Let me see if this is hidden or not. No, this is fine. I'll put myself like a text edge there. I'm probably gonna start using the green screen. I was like, oh, I don't need the green screen for the programming ones. I actually probably do. Anyway. Whew. That was a bit of a marathon, but I think we started slow, but we picked up our pace. Hopefully this was useful, and it's good knowledge to have. We explained a couple potential pitfalls that people often do not know about. So let me catch up with the chat. Well, it's possible to toggle display attribute names. And which ID? So I think we only have one standing, which is you touched on kinesiology a couple streams back. Can you recommend a good way into learning more on that subject, particularly with reference to rigging? Pick up weightlifting, anatomy books, and serious powerlifting. Even like to some extent, even bodybuilding. It's what I know comes from medical literature and powerlifting. Though I'm weak and flabby now, there was a time when I actually used to do it. So be ready to spend a lot of money. We're gonna do some stuff, but like I don't know of anything that is good out there that focuses on rigging and on the parts of kinesiology and anatomy that are interesting to rigging. And some anatomy stuff you'll find, actually there's a ton of good artistic anatomy stuff out there. You won't have trouble finding that. There's many atlases, there's some great books out there. Kinesiology, which is the science of movement for the largest part, like human anatomical kinesiology, is completely uncovered, and it bothers me, and that's one of the reasons why I was saying amongst the first principles of rigging that I think are understudied, it's one of those that I wish to cover at some point. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know of anybody in the rigging scene that has published anything interesting. And even if you go for the gym weightlifting route, you are gonna find a lot of crowd. A lot of people just don't know what they're talking about, and actually, like, if they it's not uncommon in weightlifting for too young, too inexperienced, bad coaches to actually hurt their clients. In rigging, at worst you hurt an animator a little bit, but only in the soul. If you don't know your kinesiology when you're training somebody, you actually do them real damage. Anyway, that's it. So yeah, we haven't written a lot of code, but I think we've gone over some interesting stuff. I'm gonna call it a win, and I'm gonna close it here. Thanks a lot for watching, and if you're watching this on YouTube, as usual, I have no idea what time it is or whatever. If you're on the stream, I am not gonna start. I don't think I'm gonna stream this weekend. Got too much to do. I'll probably be back next Tuesday my time, so it'll usually be Monday for Europe and the States. Because when I stream on my Monday, it's Sunday night for a lot of people, and it's terrible for viewership. Anyway, I'll see you the next time. Have a good day, everybody.